Good day, everyone. I am Quenemy Sanyel, and I'm gonna talk about the global historical foundation of education. According to Chaim Putok, the Vitas Harp, everything has a past. Everything, a person, object, a word, everything. If you don't know the past, you can't understand the present and plan properly for the future. We have here the primitive education, around 7000 BC to 500 BC. So what this primitive education aims? 1. Security and survival. 2. Conformity. 3. Preservation and transformation of traditions to the incoming generations. The types of education during these primitive times was informal, vocational, and religious, or animistic. Contents to be studied: survival and superstition, the agencies of education, home and environment, no organizations of grade levels, no financing. What it contributes to education? It started the rudiments of education from which evolved the modern educational system today. Let's proceed to Sumerian education. It aims 1. Training of scribes, bookkeepers, and teachers. 2. Training the learners to be good. The types of education during Sumerian: writing, mathematical, language, vocational, professional, and art education. Contents to be studied: reading, writing, little arithmetic, astronomy, architecture, agriculture, and hydraulics, art, vocational training, and law. Agencies of education: home, school, temple schools, apprentice schools. There were already organized classes. Large amount had to be spent for acquiring higher education. That's the financing. Outstanding contribution to education. What it contributes to education: cuneiform writing. Next is the early Egyptian education. It aims 1. Training of scribes. 2. Religious. 3. Utilitarian. 4. Preservation of cultural patterns. What types of education during early Egyptian? We have religious, vocational professional, military, priesthood, home arts, writing, reading, and language education. Education for public administrations. Contents to be studied: reading, writing, language, religion, artistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, architecture, physics, medicine, embalming, dentistry, law, music arts, physical education, and military. Agencies of education during early Egyptian: home, temple schools, military schools, court schools, and vocational schools. For financing, the pupils or students had to pay certain amount of school fees, even in the lower schools. Hence, education was not universal. What it contribute to education? The geometrical measurement and surveying. Early Chinese education. What it aims: 1. Ideological and ethical or moral learning. 2. Cultural development. 3. Civil services. What types of education during these times? Ideological, moral, language, vocational, domestic, civic, and military education. Pupils paid tuition fees. What it contribute to education? The administration of civil service exam. To make the history short, I am going to read the aims and the outstanding contribution to education. So early Hindu education. What it aims: intellectual, religious, and cultural. So what it contribute to education? The main contribution is the decimal system of arithmetical notations. So in order to understand more, you can read the types of education, the contents to be studied, the agencies of education, and the finances. So next is the early Hebrew education. So what it aims? We have 4. 1. Moral. 2. Preparation for destiny. 3. Holiness. 4. Observance of religion. So the main contribution to education during early Hebrew is the monotheism and the 10 Commandments, which we call also the Bible. So let's proceed to early Greek education around 1600 BC to 300 BC. So under early Greek education, we have 3 kinds of education. Letter A, Spartan education. B, early Athenian education. C, later Athenian education. So first, we have a Spartan education. The aims of Spartan education was the military and discipline. All financing was shouldered by the state. So the main contribution of Spartan education to global education is the military education and the development of patriotism and discipline. Next, letter B, early Athenian education. The aims of early Athenian education: first, good citizenship. 2. Individual excellence. 3. Many-sided development. Students paid tuition fees during early Athenian education. So outstanding contribution to education: first, free development of all human capacities. Second, Olympic Games. Letter C, later Athenian education. The aims of later Athenian education: first, by the Sophists, pragmatic and utilitarian. By Socrates, development of the power thinking. By Plato, control by intellectual rulers. By Aristotle, rational living. To what it contributes to education: first, the Socratic method of teaching. Second, the realm of philosophy. 3. Mathematics. 4. Art and classical literature. Then let's proceed to Roman education around 750 BC to 450 AD. Under the Roman education, we have 2 kinds of education. Letter A, the early Roman education and the late Roman education. Letter A, early Roman education. What it aims: utilitarian, moral, military, civic and political, also religious. During early Roman education was free except for private schools. Letter B, late Roman education. What is the aim of late Roman education? We have oratorical and civic. What it contributes to education: first, the method of organization, management, and administrations. Second, Romans organize of civil law. Next is the early Christian education. The aims: moral and salvation. Students availed of free education. What it contributes to education: conversion of more than one half of the world into Christianity with the highest ideals of spirituality and morality. Then next is the medieval education, around 500 AD to 1400 AD. Under medieval education, we have the four kinds of educations. A. Monasticism. B. Scholasticism. C. Chivalry. D. Guild system. So letter A. Monasticism. What it aims? Spiritual and moral. Pupils during monasticism paid some fees, and the state shouldered some expenses. Outstanding contribution to education. 1. Opposed the vices and corruption of the medieval world. 2. Europe acquired industrial skills and a concept of true dignity of manual labor. Letter B. Scholasticism. What it aims? Reasoned faith and intellectual discipline. During scholasticism, students paid fees. What is the contribution to education? First, organization of the university and the emphasis on intellectual learning. Letter C. The chivalry. What it aims? It aims morality, responsibility, horsemanship, gallantry, religiosity, and social graces. Pupils during chivalry did not pay fees. Outstanding contribution to education. The emphasis on the learning of social graces and rules of etiquette. The last one is letter D. Guild system. The aims are preparation for commercial and industrial life or the vocational preparation. During guild system, the burgher schools supported by cities, chantry schools supported by wealthy merchants. Apprenticeship was free. Outstanding contribution to education, vocational training, and apprenticeship. Then we have the Muslim education around 700 AD to 1350 AD. The aims: scientific, practical, religious, and vocational. During this Muslim education, elementary education was free, but higher education was not. Outstanding contribution to education. First to use zero and the decimal system of notation that give digits the value of position. Second, using the laboratory and experimental method in the teaching of science. Next is the Humanism, or the Renaissance, around 1350 AD to 1500 AD. Under the Humanism or the Renaissance are Italian Humanism and the Northern Humanism. So first, we have to tackle the Italian Humanism. It aims the academic freedom, abundant living, and liberal education. Rich children during Italian Humanism paid fees, but the poor children did not. Outstanding contribution to education. It provided the foundation of modern academic freedom. Renewed interest in the study of the Roman and Greek classics. Then, the Northern Humanism. It aims social, religious, literary, and the democratic. The students during Northern Humanism paid fees in all the schools. Outstanding contribution to education. First, the Class A year practice. Second, the emphasis on the social purpose of education. And the last one is the Protestants' Reformation. During this Protestants' Reformation, a major tenet of Protestantism that influenced their view on education was the idea of personal responsibility. Protestants believe that education should support the natural interest and abilities of a person rather than the interest of the church. The educational project of the Reformation, Philip Melanchthon. The educational project of the Reformation was based on Bible reading to enlighten the believers and strengthen the believers in their faith. That was the global historical foundation of education. Thank you for listening and watching, everyone.